Okay, we are going to make the small Rossatron. This time, instead of interfacing or stabilizing with foam, I'm using Decovil Light. So I have fused Decovil Light to the exterior contrast bottom panel over the Decovil Heavy. So there's fabric, woven interfacing, Decovil Heavy, and then Decovil Light on top. The two exterior, yeah, I did that wrong. So I wanted to fuse Decovil Heavy to the exterior back panel, and this will be fine. The taller lining bottom panel that's cut taller, so it would be like the back of the pocket, but the front of my pocket will have Decovil Heavy instead. I did list out in the pattern what to fuse the Decovil Light to if you choose to do that instead of foam. If you want to see how the foam is done, that is in the video for the large Rossatron. So both of the top mains have Decovil Light, and then both of my side panels have Decovil Light, and that's fused over top of the woven interfacing for each of those pieces. And then everything else is just as it says to cut it in the pattern. Oh, there's Decovil Light on my accent stripe also. Everything else is the same. I'm using fabric as my exterior contrast on this one instead of vinyl. So first we are going to add the tabs to our zipper. For the small bag, you want a 13-inch length of zipper, 9-inch length of zipper by the yard. And then I have my exterior tabs and my lining tabs. So I just want to place an exterior pocket zipper tab right side down on the right side of the zipper, and then a lining zipper tab right side with the back side of the zipper. Sewing this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and I'm using a shorter stitch length. I have it set at 3. Alright, and then we'll repeat that for the other end of the zipper. Now I'm going to press both tabs away from the zipper and wrong sides together. I pressed the pocket zipper tabs away from the zipper, wrong sides together, and then I have all of the pieces that we'll need next ready. So right now I'm just going to top stitch through each of the zipper tabs using an 1/8 inch seam allowance, so 1/8 of an inch away from the zipper. Alright, so now we want the shorter exterior bottom main. So here's mine that I accidentally fused Decovil Light to. I wanted to fuse Decovil Light to the lining panel. So it would be in the back. This will be fine. It will provide the same amount of support. I just didn't want that extra fusible on the exterior pocket. But like I said, it'll be fine. I just cut off a little bit of the extra Decovil. Alright, so I want my zipper to close to the left. So I'm going to place it right side down and line up the zipper along the top. The zipper tabs on the small bag are with the zipper with the tabs on it on the small bag are pretty much the exact same length as the top of the shorter bottom main. On the large bag, the tabs are a little bit longer and you'll need to trim those after you sew the pocket. So on the small bag, the trimming is not really necessary. Alright, so we're going to sew this using a 1/2 inch, nope, 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I move the zipper out of the way as I get to it, the zipper pull. Alright, so now we want our shorter lining bottom main. So we have two, a tall one and a short one. Shorter one, we'll go right side down. And then we're going to sew this on using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. So the exterior and lining are right sides together right now. And just make sure that you have the shorter panel and that you're matching up the shorter top edge. Alright, so 3/8 inch seam allowance. If you wanted to use zippers that were only 1 inch wide, you could do that and you would just use a 1/4 inch seam allowance for any parts that attach to a zipper. Alright, when you get to your zipper pull again, stop with the needle down with the presser foot, slide your zipper out of the way. Alright, so now I'm going to press the lining and exterior wrong sides together and away from the zipper. Alright, now we're going to top stitch beneath the zipper using an 1/8 inch seam allowance. 6, we're going to place the taller lining bottom panel at the back of this assembled front pocket. I'm going to clip together along the top edge, and I'm going to baste that in place using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Now I need to put my accent stripe on the front, so I just need to decide which one I want against the zipper. I kind of like the look of that with the purples and pinks. And then the other one will go on the back. So just place this right side down. One edge is just a little bit longer, and that will be the edge that you match up with the top of the zipper. I'm going to clip it this way because I will sew with the lining side facing up. All right, and then we'll just sew this again using a 3/8 inch seam allowance. And then I want to make sure that I know where my zipper pull is because I'll need to move that out of the way when I get to that point. And I will absolutely be cussing at myself when I get done because I decided to use this fabric, and I want to use white thread on some of it and black on other parts. So I'll be changing my thread throughout, and that's annoying. So right now I'm going to press the accent stripe up away from the zipper with the seam allowance also up toward the accent stripe. All right, the accent stripe is pressed up and away from my zipper, and now I'm going to top stitch through the accent stripe and the seam allowance, which is also pressed up toward the accent stripe, using an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. So we want to repeat to attach the other accent stripe to the other exterior bottom main. So let's see. We want to attach the wider side. And we're going to use a 3/8 inch seam allowance, even though there's no zipper here, but just so that it ends up the same height as the other. You know what, I'm going to trim my extra Decovil off the top of this first. Looks like almost a whole 1/8 of an inch at the one end, and that would make a difference. So try that again. Right sides together. Um, 3/8 inch seam allowance. I'm going to press the accent stripe up and away from the bottom main. All right, the accent stripe is pressed up away from the bottom main. The seam allowance is pressed up as well. And now I'm going to top stitch through the accent stripe and the seam allowance using an 1/8 inch seam allowance. So now number 9, step number 9, you want to take each of your handle connectors, draw a line down the center of the wrong side, and then press each of the 2-inch sides into the center line. And then we're going to top stitch along each folded edge. And I'm just going to kind of chain stitch them, I guess. If you are using just cotton fabric for this, you could put an extra 3/4 inch wide strip of Decovil light in the center so that they're a little more sturdy. Just trimming all these apart and then trimming off the threads, and then I'm going to press them all in half by bringing the short raw edges together. All right, now we want to slide a rectangle ring into the fold of each connector and baste the ends together using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to trim these all apart. each of our top main panels, exterior top mains, whatever you want to call them. Let me trim off this extra Decovil. Alright, so first we want to find the center along the bottom edge, so the wider edge. I'm going to fold it in half. And press to find the center. I will mark that. Make sure you're marking it within the seam allowance, which is 1/2 inch here. So. Alright, centers are marked, and then we want to measure 2 inches from the center on each side. So 2 inches on that side, 2 inches here, and then the same with this. I get my silver marking pens from mormino.com. Alright, now I'm going to place a connector to the outside of each of those marks. So the 2 inch mark is here and here, the connector's on the outside of each of them. And then we're going to baste that in place, also using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Alright, same thing on the other side. Now we want to take one of our exterior mains, so this is the back, and I'm going to place the top main right side down. I'm going to sew this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure when you sew over your connectors that the hardware is pulled up toward the fold in the connector and is not going to be under your needle. And I'm going to back stitch over the connectors an extra time. Again, make sure your hardware is away from the needle. to do the same thing with this one. And using a 1/2 inch seam allowance again. That hardware was folded under, that would have been bad. Alright, now we're going to press the seam allowance down toward the accent stripe. Alright, now we'll top stitch through the accent stripe and through that seam allowance using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Alright, and now I'm also going to baste all the layers of my pocket together. Alright, so I'm just using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And basting around the sides and bottom of my pocket. And now we'll top stitch the other accent stripe. And if you find that it's too bulky in the back, you can trim away some of the seam allowance after top stitching that accent stripe. And if you wanted to put rivets in, right now I would put them in beneath each of the connectors and centered on the accent stripe. So we are on to step number 13. With my exterior bottom main, we're going to place it, which side, what do I want to show up on the pink? Pink. Okay, pink will show on the front. So I'm going to place that right sides together with the front, no, the exterior bottom panel is right sides together with the front pocket, which is the exterior bottom main. All right, I'm going to sew this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Alright, now I'm going to press that seam allowance toward the bottom panel. If you were using foam, you would have basted it to the exterior main panels prior to attaching the bottom panel. I'm going to top stitch through the bottom panel and the seam allowance using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Alright, now we want to attach the other exterior main to the other side of the bottom panel. You will again sew this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Alright, now I'm going to press that seam allowance toward the bottom panel. Alright, now we're going to top stitch through the bottom panel and seam allowance using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Generally try to trim all of my threads off as I go. Okay, so we want to first mark the centers of the side of the bottom panel. So let me see, no, this will be easier to fold to find the centers because it's not an like even rectangle, like it's like something, an 1/8 that goes down to 1/8. Just easier to measure or to fold to find the centers. And I'm just clipping in 1/4 inch or so to mark where the center is. Alright, now we're going to assemble our side pockets. Alright, so I have 2 lining side pockets and 2 exterior contrast side pockets. So I'm placing those right sides together, and I'm going to sew along the top only using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. And I'll do the same with the other lining pocket and exterior contrast pocket. 1/2 inch seam allowance. I think my thread broke, or my bobbin thread ran out. Alright, I've pressed the lining and exterior contrast wrong sides together, and now I'm going to top stitch using a 1/8 inch seam allowance just along the top seam. I'm going to trim the extra Decovil light from my side panels. Alright, so I'm going to fold these in half, right sides together, to mark the center along the bottom. And I'm just snipping at the center about 1/4 of an inch or so into the seam allowance. And now I want to take my pocket and I'm placing it lining side down, matching up the bottom and the curves at the corner. And I'm going to pin at the bottom first. Put one in the center, one on each corner, and then starting on one side, I'll just clip up until I reach the top. The top of the pocket is wider than the side panel is at that point because it's made to curve away from the bag. Okay, so at this point I want to make sure that the top of my pocket is even on both sides. It should be about 3 1/4 inches down from the top, and it is. Let's go ahead and pin this one too. Clip it. This is maybe the prettiest fabric ever. This is Tula Pink line work. Really liking it. So one clip at the bottom center, one on each of the corners. And then I'll just clip up the sides. And repeat that on the other side. And then again, make sure that the top is even. And it should be about 3 1/4 inches from the top. The sides a little bit down, a little bit further. Okay. Now we want to baste the pocket in place using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. All the way down the sides, around the corners, across the bottom, back up the other side. Both of my side pockets are done. Now we want to attach the side pockets to the bag exterior. So first I'm going to line up the bottom center of the side panel with the center of the side of the bottom panel. I'm going to place a clip there and then a couple clips to either side of that, just across the bottom of the side panel. Then I'll match up the top corner of the exterior main panel with the top corner of the exterior side panel. And then I'm just going to pin, clip together down the sides and around the curve at the bottom. If you are somebody who likes to staple bottom panels and stuff, this would be probably a good place to use staples around this curve at the bottom. It is a pretty tight curve. And then I'm going to repeat this on the other side. I just pulled my zipper pull out of the way a little bit. Match the top corners. And then pin all the way down. And ease around the curve at the bottom corner. Alright, now we'll sew this together using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. You should always keep your needle in the down position when you're moving anything on your bag to keep it from shifting, and I didn't do that. I have a pair of tweezers that I use a lot when I'm sewing to help me hold things in place where I don't maybe want to get my fingers. I just go slowly around the bottom corners to make sure I maintain my 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you get off track a little bit after you're done, you can go back in and fix that. So before I trim my seam allowances, I take a look at the inside to make sure that there are no wrinkles in the seam allowance, no folds of the fabric. And then I'm going to trim the seam allowance down to between 1/4 of an inch and 1/8 of an inch. It helps to reduce bulk. It makes the lining fit inside much nicer. Now we'll repeat that to attach the other side panel. So first we're going to match up the bottom center. And then I'm going to match the top corner. And then the other top corner. Alright, so we're going to start again, top corner and 1/2 inch seam allowance. Sometimes it helps to stick your left hand inside the bag to help adjust and hold things in place. Don't be afraid to squish your bag up either to maneuver it around. You can always press everything when you're done. Check inside to see if there's any creases, folds, or puckers or anything in my seam allowance. They're not. Trim the seam allowance down as well. So we are now going to be on step number 18 and assembling the lining. Alright, we have a lining main panel and we have a lining zipper pocket panel. We want to place the zipper pocket panel 1 inch down from the top of the lining main panel and centered, which really it's just as wide, so. Alright, and then we're going to measure 1 inch down from the top of the zipper pocket panel, and we're going to draw a line that is 8 inches. Yes, 8 inches. 9 inches long. I mean, I could always look at the instructions. Would help. Okay, and then 1/2 inch down from that line, another 9 inch line. Alright, and then we're going to draw a line from the end of each line to make a box. Alright, I'm going to pin these pieces together. Alright, and we're going to sew directly over this box. Use a shorter stitch length for this. My stitch length is 3 right now. When you get to a corner, stop with your needle in the down position and rotate. So up the short side, stop with your needle down at the top and stitch back across the top of the box until you get to the other corner. And again, stop with your needle in the down position, rotate, and again. I'm going to remove the pins. Alright, and now down the center of this box, I'm going to draw a line 1/4 inch up from the bottom, so right down the middle, from one end to the other, but stopping about 1/2 inch away from the end. And then from that point, I will draw a line to each of the corners. You don't have to actually draw the line on, but that's to show where you'll cut. Get my cut started, and then I cut through both layers down to the V, and then out to the corner, but being careful not to trim through my stitches. But you want to get as close to the corner as you can. Alright, now I'm going to flip the lining pocket through this hole and press it flat towards the wrong side. Alright, I've pressed the zipper pocket panel to the wrong side so that they're wrong sides together, and pressed the rectangle opening. So now we need a 9-inch zipper, but I have this, I don't know, really long zipper, 14-inch in the color that I want, so that's what I'm going to use. I'm using Elmer's washable school glue stick, and I just carefully place it down the edges of the rectangle opening. It dries clear, so if it gets on other parts of the fabric, it's not a big deal. You could wash it off with a damp cloth because it is washable. So now I'm just centering my zipper. I'm going to flip it over and check that it's centered how I want it. I'm going to actually slide this down a little further so that my metal stopper is not in the way of anywhere I'm going to sew. You want to sew through that or over it or break your needle. Alright, now I'm just pressing the fabric down to the zipper so that the glue will hold. Alright, now I want to use a longer stitch length. I'm going to slide my zipper in place. I'm top stitching on the striped fabric with white thread. I suppose you could go black or white. I don't necessarily love the look of black thread across white fabric, so I decided to go with white. Or if you have rainbow thread, that would be like super fun for this combination of fabrics, but I don't. Again, I always stop with my needle in the down position at the corners when I pivot. I'm going to trim the excess zipper away. Alright, now I want to place my other interior zipper pocket panel right sides together with the one attached to the bag. And I'm just going to clip those two pieces together. We're going to leave the bottom open to turn the finished bag right side out, and that is the reason why this pocket is so wide, is just to help make the turning part easier. So I did that on purpose. It makes life easier later on. Alright, so now we're just going to sew around the zipper using a 1/2 inch seam allowance, or I'm sorry, around the interior zipper pocket panels. And I do want to use a shorter stitch length for this. So I put it back on 3. stitch. Alright, now we're going to trim this seam allowance. We left the bottom edge open. And just trim this down to about 1/8 of an inch. And make sure you're not cutting through your lining main panel. Alright, so our interior zipper pocket is finished now. We are now on to step number, we're still on 21 because now we need to repeat 13 to 14 to attach the lining main to the lining bottom panel. And then to attach the side panels. So at this point, before attaching these panels to the bottom, if you wanted to add any interior slip pockets, any other zip pockets, anything like that, do that now. You could add the same side pockets that are on the outside to the inside. As you can see, the small bag is pretty small, so this is better suited to be a handbag. If you're making the large bag, I think that could be a diaper bag. You could even make the pockets a little bit wider at the top to be able to fit bottles in there. So be creative, make it your own, add as many pockets as you want. Alright, so I'm going to press the seam allowance toward the bottom panel. Alright, and then I'm going to top stitch that using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Sell your bags and you have a label or tag or something that you want to attach, don't forget that, whether it's on the inside or outside. Do that now before you have it all sewn together. I should have lined this up just right when I was cutting everything out so it looked like continuous stripes going around. I didn't put that much effort into it. I didn't even have the thought until right now. Again, I'm going to press the seam allowance toward the bottom panel. Alright, so we're going to top stitch that using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Now we're going to find the center of the side of the bottom panel. And then on our lining side panels, I'll fold those in half to find the center along the bottom. And I'm just clipping barely in, probably less than 1/4 of an inch. Alright, now right sides together. First, I'm going to match up the bottom center. Place 3 clips across the bottom. And then line up the top corners. Ease around the corner, and then match the other top corner. Now I'm just going to make sure that my interior zipper panel, interior zipper pocket panels are folded back out of the way. And I'm going to sew the lining using a 5/8 inch seam allowance. And again, make sure you're not sewing through your zipper pocket. Stop with your needle in the down position when you lift your presser foot up to adjust. I just adjust often around the corners, sometimes taking it 1 stitch at a time, hand crank to go slow if you need to, and just try to avoid getting any wrinkles or puckers. So now we'll go ahead and trim the seam allowances. Be careful not to cut the interior zipper pocket. Trim my threads there from fixing that. Fold my pocket back out of the way. Alright, and then we'll repeat that with the other side panel. Match the top corners. to sew this together using a 5/8 inch seam allowance again. I just saw a wrinkle in here. I might have sewn a wrinkle in there. Well, we'll fix it if I did after I'm done. All right, make sure your zipper pockets are out of the way. Zipper pocket. Alright, now we're going to trim the seam allowance. Be careful not to trim the pocket. Alright, so on step 22, we want to draw a line lengthwise down the center of the main zipper tab. Press each long edge into that line. Then we want to fold each short edge in by 1/2 inch and press. And then we'll fold the entire tab in half and press. We want to then slide the zipper tab onto the closed end of the zipper. So my zipper will be opening at this end, so make sure you don't sew it onto the wrong side. I'm going to place a few clips on. Alright, and then we'll sew this in place all the way around the edges. Alright, we'll sew this in place using a 1/8 inch seam allowance all the way around the edges. Make sure my edges line up, and they do. So I just start at the straight edge against the zipper. I love these metal look nylon zippers because you can sew directly over the teeth and it doesn't hurt anything. You don't have to worry about breaking a needle or hitting metal teeth. now at the other end of the zipper, we want to pull the teeth open. We're going to fold the top of the zipper back at a 90-degree angle, so that about 1/4 of an inch of tape is showing past the edge behind the zipper. And then I'm just going to use about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance along that edge to just kind of tack that fold in place. And then I'm going to repeat that on the other side of the zipper and make sure that I fold the same amount back. So that it's even on both sides. Make sure that your zipper looks even, and it will look like that. Alright, now on the exterior of the bag, I want to use my ruler. I'm going to use my silver marking pen to measure on the top main panels 1/2 inch in from the corner seam on each of them. And I'm just marking within the seam allowance, which will be 3/8 of an inch. So just make sure that your line is less than that. Alright, and then we'll repeat that on the back. I clearly did not top stitch or back stitch here. 1 second. Alright, so I want to make sure I'm starting on the front side of my bag, which has the zipper. I'm going to place this zipper face down, and I'm matching up the folded back part of the teeth with that first 1/2 inch line. And then I'm just going to put the zipper in place. Let me clip it like this, and then I'll show it to you. Alright, and then when you reach the other 1/2 inch mark at the other end, you want to curve the zipper down into the bag. So 1/2 inch mark, this is folded back. The other 1/2 inch mark, the zipper folds in. So now I'm going to baste the zipper in place using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I'm just going to take my time and make sure to keep it even. If your zipper doesn't stay even, it could look wavy on the finished bag when it's zip closed. And then when you reach the other 1/2 inch mark, make sure that your zipper is curving down toward the inside of the bag. And now I'm going to repeat that to baste the zipper to the other side of the bag. Make sure that your zipper is not twisted. And I like to start clipping from the side that's folded back first so I can make sure that those marks are even. Alright, so again, the 1/2 inch mark is right at the beginning of the teeth that are folded up, and then the other 1/2 inch mark is here. This time I'll start sewing where the end of the zipper curves down inside the bag. So I don't have that very end of it clipped in place, so I'm just going to hold it so that it's curved down and start sewing. I'll use my tweezers to hold it in place. Or, yes, they are tweezers. So the zipper is fully basted in place. Make sure that the end is pushed down completely. We're going to make sure that the interior zipper pocket is unzipped all the way. And I'm going to turn it right side out. We're right now on step number 9. No, page 9, step 26. So my exterior is still inside out. I'm going to turn my lining right side out. I have a couple of threads to trim here. Alright, I want to place the side with the zipper facing the back of the exterior, so the side without the zipper on the exterior. Push that down inside, and now first I'm going to match up the 4 corners. Make sure that your zipper stays curved down inside the bag, the top zipper. And then again on the other 2 corners. and then all the way around the rest of the top. This is pretty quick. We're almost done already. I'm constantly throwing my clips on the floor. Alright, once that's clipped all the way around, go ahead and just start sewing wherever. We're going to use a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance for this part. So I'm just going to try to take my time and keep it nice and consistent, so that the top doesn't end up wavy. I always adjust with my needle down so I can do all that and don't have to worry about the whole bag shifting. I'm going to, at this point, go ahead and reach my hand inside the opening of the zipper to make sure that my zipper, where it's curved in, stayed curved down right. Or at least that it feels right. I think it does. Well, we're going to find out. So you can trim, if you want to trim the seam allowances only at the corners, you can trim the ends of your zipper tape off. And then I would trim the corners only, and you can trim along the side panels if you want, but do not trim along the zippers. That will cause the zipper eventually to fray and pull out of the seam. Alright, I'm going to turn this inside or right side out, but I cannot do it out here. I'm going to do it on my lap. Alright, my bag is turned right side out. I pressed the opening of the interior zipper pocket in by about 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 of an inch. It doesn't matter as long as it's even. I'm going to clip that together. And I'm just going to top stitch along the folded edges to close the bottom of the pocket. I'm going to tuck the pocket down inside. And I can zip that closed. Alright, now I need to press the top seam really well, and then I'm going to turn the bag inside out to top stitch around the top. Alright, so I like to top stitch my bag inside out. I put white thread in the bobbin just now, and then I have black thread on top. So hopefully it works out how I plan. And I'm just going to start on one of the top of one of the side panels. And I'm using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. Trim these threads. Turn the bag right sides out, and I'm going to do these steps a little bit out of order, just because I don't want to change my thread colors more times than I have to. so now we're skipping the handles right now and going ahead to step number 30. So I'm going to fold the bag at the side seam, lining sides together, and I'm just going to sew using a 1/4 inch seam allowance about 1/2 inch down from the top. So you don't even need to really pin that in place. It's a little bit thick at the top. And I'm going to break my needle. I'm going to back stitch and then stitch across again. Going to repeat that on each of the corners. And so I'm just folding at the side seam, lining sides together, sewing using a 1/4 inch seam allowance just about from the top down about 1/2 inch. This can be a little bit thick toward the top seams. Alternatively, if you don't want to sew that, you could put a rivet at the top corner. All right, and then we're going to repeat that on the other corners. And I make sure that I'm using a thread that coordinates with my exterior for this. All right. If you left, you could leave the Decovil light out of the top. The side panel has markings on it for cutting the foam. You could use those markings to cut the Decovil light to keep it from being in all of the top seams, and that would be a little less bulky here. Trim all of the threads. And then we just need to do handles and give everything a final nice press. Here's our bag almost finished. Still pretty wrinkly. A little bit. Alright, so step 28 is to make the handles. I already pressed mine, but you will press each of the handles in half lengthwise to make a crease in the center. Open it back up, press each of the long raw edges into the center crease, and then fold in half again along the original crease and press. Now I'm going to top stitch along both of the folded edges using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. those threads. On the large bag, I use rivets to attach the vinyl handles. On this bag, I'm going to sew them on. Alright, so now I want to press the handle to the wrong side by 1/2 inch and then a full inch. Alright, I pressed each of the ends of each of my handles under by 1/2 inch and then under again by about 1 inch. And now I'm going to sew them onto the bag. So I want to place the handle into the fold. Let's see, which way do I want it to go? I want it this way. And then repeat that on the other side. And obviously if you want longer handles, if you want this to be a shoulder bag, you can just go ahead and make your handles longer. I made them short for this to be a handbag. So I just pin those in place, or well, clip them in place. Alright, and then this is not maybe the easiest part, to get it under the sewing machine. And I'm just going to stitch as close to the hardware as I can, all the way across the handle, and then back stitch, and then stitch again. I'll worry about trimming all my threads when I'm done. I'm going to remove the clip, and then I'm going to sew again one more time up near the top of the fold. And just try to keep this line of stitching parallel with your first line of stitching. So many threads to trim. Alright, and then that's the gist of it. I'm going to attach the other handle off camera. So that will be your finished bag. There's a separate video for the large. I'm going to press this and I'll get pictures, so you'll see a picture of the completed bag at the beginning of the video. But that's it. Not too bad. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join my Facebook group, Sincerely Jen Patterns group. Follow me on Instagram at Sincerely Jen Patterns. And I hope you'll share your bags with me. Thank you.